The atmosphere in the lavish hotel room was electric, charged with an intensity that threatened to shatter the very walls surrounding us. I could feel the tremors of my heart against my chest, a relentless drumbeat echoing my rage and sorrow. Standing before Sarah, my wife, I noticed the flicker of panic in her eyes, which danced between defiance and guilt. Next to her stood Maxwell, a smirk on his face that dug under my skin like a thorn. This was the moment I had envisioned countless times, wrestling with the fantasies of revenge that had painted my thoughts in dark hues of betrayal. With an unsteady but resolute hand, I pressed the button on my phone, and the image flickered to life on the large screen in front of our small gathering. A room filled with friends, colleagues, and unsuspecting witnesses. The video unfolded like a sinister storybook, revealing the truth that had clawed at my insides for months. There they were, Sarah and Maxwell, entangled in the intimacy I had thought was ours, wrapped in whispers and laughter that mocked the foundation of our marriage. Gasps erupted around me, and I could almost taste the shock and disbelief hanging in the air like a thick fog. Sarah's face drained of color as the realization crashed down upon her. Her secret had finally escaped the confines of deceit. The silence that enveloped the room was palpable, like a living entity that gnawed at the edges of my sanity. I remember the way her lips parted slightly, as if she were about to speak, but no words emerged. It was a hollow moment, one where the truth stood tall and her facade crumbled like dust. "Welcome to the truth," I said, my voice a low growl that resonated with the tension in the room. The words tasted bitter, yet they flowed freely, a necessary proclamation in this theater of betrayal. I saw the flicker of anger in Sarah's eyes, but it was drowned out by waves of confusion and shame. Each gasp from my audience felt like a dagger into her carefully constructed world, and I reveled in the sight of her unraveling. I turned away, feeling a rush of triumph mingled with an ache deep in my chest. It was a hollow victory, this revelation, but within the chaos, I found a spark of satisfaction that simmered beneath my grief. As I walked away from the stunned crowd, past faces that mirrored my own inner turmoil, I felt the weight of my choices. The choice to expose her, to take back the control she had wrenched away from me. But the triumph was fleeting, chased away by memories that clawed at my heart. Images of happier times flickered through my mind. A sunlit park where we shared laughter, the warmth of her hand in mine during our wedding vows, the gentle smile she wore when she looked at me with love. Each recollection felt like a betrayal of its own, a reminder of everything I had lost in this game of deceit. The room dimmed around me, shadows creeping into the corners like the doubts that now loomed over my marriage. I had always believed in the sanctity of our bond, a bond forged in love and nurtured through years of shared dreams. How had I been so blind? The signs had been there, swirling just out of reach, hidden behind the veil of normalcy we had crafted together. But now, they stood glaringly obvious, a cruel mockery of my trust. Later that night, as I sat alone in the hotel bar nursing a whiskey, the faces of Sarah and Maxwell flashed before me, a constant reminder of their betrayal, a ghost that haunted my thoughts. I could still hear the laughter they had shared, the way she had smiled at him, a smile that had once been reserved only for me. A surge of anger washed over me, a familiar but unwelcome tide pulling me deeper into the chasm of my emotions. I was left standing on the precipice of revenge, the path stretching before me, dark and fraught with uncertainty. The bartender brought my drink, the rich amber liquid swirling like the storm raging within me. With each sip, I felt the fluid courage swell inside me, igniting the embers of my plan. I could no longer be a passive observer in my own life, a victim of their choices. No, I would take action. I would expose their betrayal, dismantle the life that had been built on lies. They would face the consequences of their actions, and I would be the architect of their undoing. As I gathered my resolve, I understood that this was not just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my identity, my dignity, the man I had once been before their infidelity shattered my world. I would rise from the ashes of this betrayal, stronger and unwavering. My heart still throbbed with sadness, but the fire of vengeance ignited a new purpose within me. a purpose that would guide my every move in the days to come. The game had begun, and I was no longer a pawn. I was the king, ready to reclaim my kingdom from those who dared to take it from me. Life, before the storm, was a symphony of laughter, love, and the whispered promises we exchanged in the quiet moments. Sarah and I had built what others called a perfect marriage, a life adorned with fleeting glimmers of joy and the stalwart comfort of companionship. I often found myself lost in the warmth of her gaze, the way she laughed at my jokes, even the terrible ones, or how she would curl into my side on the couch, her head resting against my shoulder as we watched movies late into the night. Yet now, in the aftermath of our shattered facade, those memories felt like shards of glass, cutting deep into my heart. I remember the night we shared a candlelit dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant, the air thick with the aroma of basil and garlic. It was an ordinary weeknight transformed into something special, a reminder that we were still us, two souls entwined amidst the everyday chaos of life. As we clinked our glasses, her eyes sparkled with mischief, and I felt the stirrings of hope, a fleeting thought that perhaps I was simply overreacting to the subtle shifts I had perceived in her demeanor. But as I sat alone now, in the dim light of the hotel bar, the laughter of that night echoed like a distant memory. I replayed every moment in my mind, scrutinizing how close we had come to the precipice of betrayal without ever realizing it. Could I have read the signs? Was I so ensnared in my belief of our bond that I blinded myself to her distance? Those questions gnawed at me, and I pushed them away with another sip of whiskey, the burn grounding me amidst the swirling chaos. Our home, once filled with the innocent chaos of our children's laughter, felt like a cage now, the walls echoing with silence. I could still hear their playful screams and the way Sarah would chase them through the living room, her laughter ringing like a melody that once soothed my soul. But the lingering memory of their happiness now felt tainted, a crude reminder of the life we had built together, one that was now intertwined with lies and manipulation. As I reflected on our family, the stakes of this betrayal loomed larger than ever. It wasn't just about Sarah and Maxwell. It was about our children. They were innocents caught in the crossfire of my heart's battle, and the thought of their confusion and sorrow twisted my insides. I could not allow this betrayal to define the life we had crafted. I must restore order to the shattered remains. The next day, with the fire of revenge burning brightly within me, I began observing Sarah more closely. Each shift in her behavior became a puzzle piece, a whisper of her deceit. I noted her late-night phone calls, the secretive glances at her phone screen, and the lingering scent of perfume that was not mine, each revelation a dagger to my heart, fueling my determination. I was a detective in my own life, and the truth was an elusive quarry I was ready to capture. One evening, as I sat hunched over my laptop, I stumbled upon a friend request from Maxwell on Sarah's social media page. My heart sank, a cold wave of jealousy washing over me as I realized he had infiltrated our lives, lurking in the shadows of our happiness. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, the anger coiling tight within me like a spring ready to unleash chaos. Just days earlier, I had scoffed at the idea of infidelity, believing wholeheartedly that our love was impenetrable. Now, the walls of my reality crumbled around me. That same night, I gathered the courage to confront Sarah about the request. When I asked her about it at dinner, feigning casualness, her laughter echoed hollowly, an attempt to brush it off. "Oh, it's nothing, just a colleague from work," she said, glancing away, fingers nervously twisting the edge of her napkin. A pit formed in my stomach, an intuitive voice whispering that this was not just a harmless interaction. Our conversation turned into a dance of hidden truths. Each question I posed met with increasingly clever deflections. This wasn't the woman I once knew. I was now dealing with a stranger, a facade of warmth masking the betrayal simmering beneath the surface. I felt a tightness in my chest, the tension of unspoken accusations swirling between us, and I knew then that I could no longer remain passive. The scales of justice required a more active role from me. The betrayed husband would become the avenger. In the quiet of the night, ideas began to take shape in my mind. I sought out a private investigator, a shadowy figure lurking in the corners of my thoughts, ready to unearth the truth I so desperately needed. Each day felt like a countdown, a race against time to gather evidence and to understand the depth of Sarah's betrayal. The investigators' findings came as a gut punch. Text messages, images of rendezvous, a glimpse into the world they had built outside of mine. Each revelation sent me deeper into the rabbit hole of my emotions, where confusion wrestled with the burning need for revenge. Late one evening, I overheard Sarah on the phone, her laughter floating down the hallway like a siren's call. "Yes, I can't wait to see you again, Maxwell," she cooed, a sweetness in her voice that shattered my heart. In that moment, a cold resolve settled within me, a resolve to dismantle everything she had created in the shadows, to blow apart the life they'd woven together like a spider's web of deceit. And so, I began to plot, knowing that with each step I took, I would reclaim my dignity and unleash the vengeance that had been simmering beneath the surface. My heart might be heavy with betrayal, but my resolve was unyielding. I would become the architect of my own fate, setting the stage for a reckoning that would leave neither Sarah nor Maxwell unscathed. The pieces were aligning, and I was ready to play my hand. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the living room as I settled into a familiar routine of disillusionment. My surroundings felt more like a stage set for a tragedy than a home. The echoes of our children's laughter, once the sweetest symphony, now rang hollow in contrast to the chaos brewing within me. Each day felt like a slow descent into the abyss, and I found myself grasping at the frayed ends of our marriage, trying to hold on to something that was slipping through my fingers like sand. It was during one of those quiet evenings, the children tucked safely in bed, that I began to notice the sinister changes in Sarah's behavior more acutely. The subtle shift in her demeanor had been nagging at me for weeks, but now it was as if I was seeing the world through a lens that had been cleansed of its rose-colored tint. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living with a stranger. The warmth and compassion that had colored our interactions were now overshadowed by her evasiveness and secrecy. The scent of perfume lingered in the air, a fragrance I didn't recognize. It wrapped around me, a cruel reminder that I was no longer the sole occupant of her heart. I couldn't recall the last time I had felt her skin against mine, the intimacy we once shared replaced by an uncomfortable distance. That evening, as I watched her prepare dinner with a distracted air, I felt a storm brewing within me, a tempest of confusion and rage. "Are you okay?" I ventured, trying to catch her gaze, hoping for any sign of the woman I had adored. She turned to me, her eyes flitting away as if she were balancing on the edge of a dangerous precipice. "Just a long day, Mark." Her response was rehearsed, the tone too light, too polished, a veneer that barely concealed the truth. Each day, I watched her grow more distant, lost in her own world. It felt as if I were living in a house where shadows danced, whispering secrets I could not decipher. I scoured our home for clues, piecing together the puzzle of her deceit. I became an unwilling detective, surreptitiously observing her every move. I noted the late-night phone calls that ended abruptly upon my arrival, the hushed laughter that faded when I entered the room, and the way she seemed to fidget whenever I asked about her day. I found myself drawn to her phone more than ever, an unyielding magnet pulling me toward the truth. It was an invasiveness I never thought I would stoop to, but desperate times called for desperate measures. One evening, emboldened by a mix of anger and heartache, I picked up her phone from the coffee table. The screen lit up with notifications, a stream of messages that felt like daggers aimed at my heart. I hesitated, my pulse racing, but the urge to know overcame the guilt I felt creeping in. With a quiet resolve, I opened the messaging app. My breath caught in my throat as I scrolled through the exchanges between Sarah and Maxwell. The banality of their conversation contrasted sharply with the intensity of my emotions. They discussed future plans, affectionate nicknames littered throughout their exchanges like breadcrumbs, leading to a dark forest of betrayal. My heart pounded as I read their words, each "I miss you," every playful tease, felt like a knife plunging deeper. The night air outside felt heavy as I set the phone back down, my world spinning into chaos. I replayed their conversations in my mind, unable to shake the image of Sarah's face, her laughter shared with someone else, a stranger who had wormed his way into the sanctity of our lives. The memories of our wedding vows loomed large, a stark contrast to the reality that had unraveled before me. Those sacred promises felt like a faded photograph, the colors draining from my recollections. As the hours stretched into the early morning, I turned to the only ally I had left, my anger. It pulsed through my veins, fueling the embers of revenge that had begun to smolder. I realized I couldn't remain a victim to their betrayal. I needed to reclaim my narrative. I was no longer a passive observer. I was an avenger, ready to dismantle the very lives they had constructed on the ruins of my heart. In the days that followed, I embarked on a journey of transformation. I approached each day with intention, my mind racing with strategies, each thought a calculated move in the game of revenge. I reached out to old friends who could help me gather intel on Maxwell. They were unaware of my pain, but I wielded my charm like a weapon, carefully weaving tales of curiosity about his business ventures, all while slowly piecing together the information I would need. I found myself lingering around Sarah's social media, the glowing screen a portal into the world she had tried to hide from me. It felt like a sickness, a poison seeping into my veins, yet I needed to know everything. A friend request from Maxwell appeared, and I felt the bile rise in my throat. In that moment, I decided this could no longer be a silent war. He was a threat, and if it was war they wanted, then war it would be. As I plotted my next move, the emotional weight of betrayal and despair contended with the adrenaline of planning my revenge. I had crossed a threshold, stepping into a realm where anger and heartbreak fused into something potent and dangerous. I would expose their affair, unveil the truth, and send shockwaves through the lives they had built together. Late at night, as the world outside curled into slumber, I began to forge my plan. I would become a ghost, moving among them, hidden in the shadows of their lives. Each detail, each moment, would be meticulously crafted to ensure that when the truth came crashing down, it would be an avalanche that left no survivors in its wake. With a heart still heavy with sorrow, I felt the fire of vengeance ignite anew, guiding me forward. I was ready to reclaim my life, to face the darkness head-on. The precipice of betrayal had transformed me, and I would emerge not as a victim, but as a force to be reckoned with. The game of revenge had begun, and I would not falter. Sitting in the dim glow of my office, the weight of the world pressed heavy on my chest. The shadows of betrayal coiled around me, whispering secrets that clawed at my sanity. My plan was set in motion, but the path remained shrouded in uncertainty. I was no longer simply a husband reeling from infidelity. I was a man on a mission, a detective navigating the murky waters of deceit. Every turn I took deepened the agony, yet propelled me closer to the truth. I knew I had to tread carefully, for one wrong step could send my carefully orchestrated plan crumbling to the ground. The investigator I had hired was a rugged man with a scruffy beard and an air of quiet competence. His name was Bill, and his reputation preceded him. We met in a sketchy diner, one of those places that held secrets like the patrons who frequented it. As I slid into the booth opposite him, I felt the weight of my desperation transform into a steely resolve. "Let's cut to the chase," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Bill leaned in, eyes scanning the empty restaurant before he slid a folder across the table. "This is what I've got so far," he muttered, his tone grave. As I opened the folder, a wave of nausea washed over me. Inside were photographs capturing moments I had never wanted to witness. Sarah and Maxwell, lost in their world, their laughter a cruel echo of what I had once known. I thumbed through the images, each one a sharper shard of betrayal than the last. There they were, entwined in each other's arms, the sweetness of their smiles cutting deeper than any knife could. "He's got a routine," Bill continued, his voice steady as I gritted my teeth against the wellspring of emotion. "Meets her at the same restaurant every Tuesday." Each detail added another piece to the puzzle of betrayal that had unraveled my life. I felt like an intruder in my own home, observing the remnants of a love I thought secure. The images burned into my mind, a gallery of pain that would haunt my every waking moment. I want video evidence, I insisted, steeling myself against the impending storm. Bill nodded. I can make that happen, but you need to be cautious. If you go in too deep, you risk everything. I looked at him, anger and sadness battling within. Everything is already at stake. I can't live with this knowledge without taking action. The fire of vengeance simmered beneath my skin, urging me forward. I wouldn't allow my heart to remain a victim of their betrayal. In the days that followed, the investigator became my lifeline, a bridge to the truth I so desperately craved. I squandered hours in a haze of anxiety, waiting for him to deliver the evidence that would mark the beginning of the end for Sarah and Maxwell. My thoughts spiraled between despair and determination, and with each sunrise, I transformed further into the man I had never imagined I would become. Every moment spent on this path only deepened the rift within me. I was trapped in a dichotomy of love and loathing, longing to hold Sarah close while simultaneously wanting to unleash the full force of my wrath upon her. I recalled the warmth of her hand intertwined with mine, the simple joys that filled our days, and felt the pang of loss settle heavily on my chest. Yet, buried within that pain was a burgeoning resolve. I could no longer allow their deceit to fester unchecked. It had to be met with consequence. The night before the meeting, I stood in the kitchen, the silence suffocating. I watched her as she prepared dinner, her back turned to me. The rhythmic motions of chopping vegetables felt foreign, like watching a stranger perform mundane tasks. In that moment, I felt the weight of every unspoken word hang suspended in the air. Are we really okay? I asked, the question slipping past my lips before I could stop it. She glanced over her shoulder, surprise flickering in her eyes. Of course, why wouldn't we be? Her voice, light and airy, did little to quell the tempest raging inside me. But I saw the truth in her eyes, a flicker of guilt that resonated like a siren's call. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind, each one an accusation, a reminder of the reality that lay beneath her placid surface. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the weight of my plan held me hostage. I was biding my time, waiting for the right moment to strike. Days passed like an eternity, and finally, the call came. Bill had secured the video footage. I felt a thrill of anticipation flood my senses, mingling with dread. The time had come to confront the shadows lurking in my life. I arranged to meet Bill at the same diner, my heart racing as I approached the table where he sat, his expression grave. He slid the USB drive across the table, and as I took it into my hands, a wave of nausea collided with the adrenaline coursing through me. Are you ready for this? Bill asked, his voice low and somber. I nodded, though doubt crept into my mind. I have to be. As I left the diner that night, the weight of the world rested upon my shoulders. The footage captured moments that would shape my future and send shockwaves through Sarah's life. I was prepared to tear down the walls of deceit that had entangled us, to expose the truth to the world she coveted and cherished. Once home, I sat before my laptop, the USB drive trembling in my hand. My heart raced as I clicked play, and the screen flickered to life. There they were, Sarah and Maxwell, their laughter echoing like a cruel melody. The images played out before me, and a wave of rage surged through my veins. I was watching the dismantling of my life unfold in real time, a front-row seat to the betrayal that had shattered my world. As their intimacy danced across the screen, I felt the fire of vengeance ignite anew. I would wield this truth like a sword, cutting through the fabric of their deceit, letting the world know the reality behind their facade. The time for revenge had come, and as I watched the life I had once known slip away, I embraced the darkness that had settled within me, ready to unleash it upon those who dared to shatter my heart. The night loomed heavy, pregnant with unspoken words and palpable tension. I could hardly breathe as I paced the length of our living room, my heart racing in sync with the pounding in my ears. The USB drive that contained the damning evidence of Sarah's betrayal felt like a lit fuse in my pocket, set to ignite the destruction of our lives. I was no longer the man who had once believed in the sanctity of love. I had become a storm, a force of nature prepared to wreak havoc on those who had betrayed my trust. Each step I took echoed the conflict raging within me. Love battling against anger, loyalty wrestling with the desire for revenge. I paused, casting a glance at the framed photographs lining the walls, each capturing a moment of joy and intimacy that now felt like a taunt, a mockery of what had been lost. It was a lifeline to a past that seemed irretrievably shattered. I let out a shaky breath, trying to stave off the memories that threatened to engulf me, but they came rushing back like a tidal wave. I could see Sarah in those pictures, her radiant smile lighting up our life together. The day we brought our first child home, the vacations filled with laughter and love, and the countless moments that had once defined us. But those images were now stained with the knowledge of her deceit. How could someone who had shared so much with me betray the very essence of our bond? I shook my head, willing the sting of tears away. This was no time for weakness. It was time for clarity, for resolution. The clock ticked like a metronome, each second amplifying the tension that coiled around me. I had to confront her, to expose the truth that had festered beneath the surface of our marriage. My heart surged with a mix of fear and exhilaration as I contemplated what lay ahead. The confrontation wouldn't just be an exposure of Sarah's secret. It would be a reckoning, a moment that would redefine our lives forever. With deliberate intent, I steeled my resolve and walked toward our bedroom, the door creaking under my hand as I pushed it open. The sight of Sarah, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just outside her peaceful slumber, sent a fresh wave of anger coursing through me. She lay draped in the sheets, her back turned to me, every soft rise and fall of her breathing a reminder of the intimacy we once shared. I took a deep breath, the air thick with unspoken truths. Sarah, my voice, though steady, carried an undercurrent of tension that sent a shiver through the stillness of the room. She stirred slightly, turning her head to offer me a sleepy smile that faltered when she noticed my expression. Mark, is everything okay? The question hung in the air, a fragile thread that threatened to snap under the weight of my anger. We need to talk. The urgency in my voice pulled her from her haze of sleep, and I could see the flicker of confusion cross her face. Talk about what? She asked, her tone light but her eyes betraying a glint of apprehension. About you and Maxwell. The words tumbled out, cutting through the pretense like a knife through butter. The room shifted, the atmosphere thickening with tension as her eyes widened in disbelief. What do you mean? She stammered, sitting upright, her expression morphing into one of alarm. I reached into my pocket, my fingers wrapping around the USB drive that felt like a ticking bomb. I know everything, Sarah. The late-night calls, the hidden messages, the laughter you share with him behind my back. It's all there. I lifted the drive, the weight of it symbolizing the burden I had carried for too long. Her face blanched, and for a split second, I reveled in the shock that washed over her. Mark, I can explain? She blurted out, scrambling to find the right words, but the desperation in her voice made my blood run cold. Explain what? I interrupted, my voice rising with each syllable. How you've deceived me, how you've shattered everything we built. There's nothing to explain that could ever justify this. The silence that followed was deafening, heavy with the weight of her choices. I could see the gears turning in her mind, the realization that her carefully constructed web of lies was unraveling before her. There was no escape. The truth would not allow it. Mark, please, she said, her voice trembling. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. I scoffed, anger sparking like fire in my chest. A mistake? You think this is just a simple mistake? You've been lying to me for months, living a double life while I poured my heart into our marriage. And now you want me to believe it was meaningless? Tears glistened in her eyes, and I felt a flicker of empathy amidst the chaos. But it was quickly drowned by a tidal wave of betrayal. It's too late for that, Sarah. You've crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. You chose Maxwell over our family. You made that decision every single time you picked up the phone, every time you laughed at his jokes. Her shoulders slumped as silence enveloped us once again, the reality of my words settling between us like a chasm too wide to bridge. I stepped closer, the USB drive clutched tightly in my hand, ready to unleash the evidence that would seal her fate. I'm going to show everyone. I'll make sure they know who you really are, what you've done. My voice trembled, a mixture of triumph and sorrow. You thought you could hide this from me? Welcome to the truth. As I turned to leave, I felt a rush of conflicting emotions wash over me. There was triumph in my heart, but it was laced with deep sorrow. Sorrow for the life we had lost, for the children caught in the crossfire of our crumbling marriage. I was walking away from the remnants of what had once been, stepping into a future where revenge had become my sole companion. And as I stepped out into the night, I felt like a ghost, both of the man I had been and the man I was destined to become, one forged in the fires of betrayal, cloaked in the shadows of vengeance. Tomorrow would bring revelations, but tonight, I would drown in the bittersweet taste of justice soon to be served. The dawn broke with a bruised hue, the sunlight filtering through the curtains like a hesitant whisper, yet I felt no warmth in its embrace. I sat at the edge of our bed, the USB drive resting in my palm like a heavy anchor, tethering me to the reality that had morphed overnight. Each tick of the clock echoed in my chest, reminding me that time was a thief, stealing away the comfort of my past and replacing it with the chilling anticipation of what lay ahead. I had spent the night wrestling with shadows, memories of laughter, love, and trust twisted into nightmares of betrayal. My heart felt hollow, as if the weight of Sarah's deceit had carved out a gaping hole, leaving only the remnants of anger and sorrow in its wake. I had been a fool to think our love was impenetrable, to believe that the life we had built together was insulated from the storms of infidelity. The ache in my chest throbbed with every breath I took, a consistent reminder of the fragility of our bond. I rose from the bed, my movements mechanical, and wandered into the kitchen. The air was thick with the lingering scent of burnt coffee from the previous day, a motif of our crumbling life. The children were still asleep, blissfully unaware of the turmoil that loomed just beyond their innocent dreams. I poured myself a cup, the bitter liquid matching the taste of betrayal still lingering on my tongue. Taking a sip, I felt the warmth spread through me, but it did little to chase away the coldness gripping my heart. As I stared out the window, I could see the neighbors going about their morning routines, still blissfully unaware of the storm brewing within my home. The mundane realities of life felt like an insult, like a cruel joke played at my expense. How could the world continue to turn so effortlessly when everything in my life felt so irrevocably broken? I realized then that I could not allow this day to slip through my fingers like the countless moments I once cherished with Sarah. Today was about reckoning. Today was the day I would set my plan in motion. With the sun climbing steadily in the sky, I felt a renewed sense of purpose surge within me. I would no longer be a passive victim. I would enact a carefully crafted revenge that would expose their betrayal and restore my dignity. The plan had taken shape in my mind like a delicate dance, each step meticulously choreographed, every action calculated to bring about maximum impact. I would become a specter in their lives, lingering in the shadows, watching as the truth unfurled before them. I began by creating a false social media account, a facade I would use to connect with Sarah, posing as a hopeless admirer drawn to her beauty and charm. It felt strange to craft such duplicity, but the necessity of it fueled my resolve. Each keystroke was a reminder that I was reclaiming control over the narrative of my life. I had once been her husband, her partner in a sacred bond, but I was now a ghost, lurking just beyond the confines of their betrayal. As I crafted the persona of my alter ego, I felt a surge of exhilaration coursing through me. I reached out to Sarah with messages that dripped with admiration, carefully chosen words designed to lure her in, to gain her trust. With each reply, the thrill of deception blossomed within me, a dangerous dance that fed my desire for revenge. I knew it was wrong, that I was playing a perilous game, but the taste of vengeance was intoxicating, blurring the lines between right and wrong. In the days that followed, I became ensnared in the intricacies of my plan, gathering intel as I navigated the dual life I had created. I reached out to old friends, those who knew Maxwell, learning everything I could about him and the shadows he had cast over our lives. Each conversation, Each glimmer of information added fuel to the fire burning within me. It was during one of these late-night discussions that I discovered something that piqued my interest. A potential scandal involving Maxwell's company, a skeleton waiting to be unearthed. I felt a wicked sense of excitement wash over me as I connected the dots. This was the leverage I needed to crush him, to dismantle the pedestal upon which he had placed himself, standing proudly in the light of Sarah's affection. With this newfound ammunition, I pressed forward. I forged alliances with those who could help me expose Maxwell's unethical practices. Through clandestine meetings and hushed conversations, I pieced together the intricate web of deceit that linked Sarah and Maxwell. Each revelation intensified my determination to dismantle the world they had built upon lies. As the day of reckoning approached, I felt the anticipation bubbling beneath my skin. I was more than just a husband scorned. I was a man reclaiming his power, his identity. I meticulously planned a corporate gala that Maxwell would attend, an event that would provide the perfect stage for my revelation. The thought of watching him squirm under the weight of his own deceit filled me with a sense of satisfaction that was impossible to suppress. The night before the gala, I lay awake, replaying each detail in my mind. I could almost feel the electricity in the air, the crisp tension as I prepared to expose the truth that had been lurking in the shadows. Would Sarah's face reveal the realization of the damage she had wrought? Would Maxwell's arrogance crumble in the face of the evidence I held? As I drifted into a restless sleep, I felt the weight of my choices settle over me, a cloak of determination that wrapped around my shoulders. Tomorrow would be the culmination of my plan, the moment I would reclaim my narrative from the clutches of their betrayal. With a heart heavy with sorrow and a mind sharpened by vengeance, I prepared to unleash the storm that would change everything. The dawn would break again, but this time, it would herald a new beginning, a reckoning that would leave no stone unturned in the wake of betrayal. I would emerge not just as a man wronged, but as an avenger wielding truth as my weapon. The game had transformed. It was no longer a simple tale of love and loss, but a battle for redemption, one that I was determined to win. The evening of the corporate gala arrived, draping the world in a veneer of elegance and celebration, a stark contrast to the storm that brewed within me. The glitzy venue was aglow with soft lights, laughter ricocheting off the walls like shards of glass. It was a world Sarah and I had once navigated together, hand in hand, but now it felt foreign, tainted by the betrayal that hung heavily in the air like a fog. As I stood in my tailored suit, I felt the threads of my plan weaving together, each strand a step closer to the reckoning I had long awaited. Tonight I was not Mark, the husband scorned. I was a ghost, an avenger in the night, ready to dismantle the facade that shielded Sarah and Maxwell from the consequences of their actions. The weight of the USB drive in my pocket felt reassuring, a talisman of truth that would expose their betrayal to the world. The gala hall was a swirl of colors and laughter, but my focus remained razor-sharp. I scanned the crowd, searching for them, my heart thundering in my chest. There, across the room, stood Maxwell, exuding confidence, his smile wide and unfettered. Beside him, Sarah laughed, her eyes sparkling with a joy that felt like a punch to my gut. In that moment, the depth of their betrayal struck me anew, a visceral reminder of everything I had lost. But I pushed the pain aside, channeling it into a steely resolve. Tonight was about unveiling the truth. I caught the eye of an old friend, one of the executives at Maxwell's company, a man named Thomas who had always respected my judgment. He was my ally in this game, the one who would help me execute the plan that would leave no room for denial. As I approached him, he raised an eyebrow, sensing the tension that crackled in the air. "Ready?" he asked, his voice low and conspiratorial. I nodded, unable to suppress the flicker of excitement coursing through me. "Let's make this night unforgettable." Together, we moved through the crowd, approaching the stage where Maxwell was due to give a speech. Every step felt like a march toward destiny, each heartbeat resonating with a mixture of adrenaline and anticipation. The moment was drawing near, and I could feel the gravity of the impending reveal anchoring me to the ground. As Maxwell ascended the stage, bathed in the warm glow of the spotlight, I felt a surge of triumph mixed with a simmering anger. His words flowed over the audience, charm and charisma painting a portrait of a man who had deftly avoided the shadows of his own actions. But the time for deception was over. I reached into my pocket, the coolness of the USB drive sending shivers down my spine. With a nod to Thomas, I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the rush of emotions. As Maxwell reached the climax of his speech, extolling the virtues of integrity and hard work, I stepped forward, interrupting him with an urgency that reverberated through the hall. "Maxwell!" My voice rang out, slicing through the applause like a knife. The crowd turned, their laughter fading into an uneasy silence as all eyes landed on me. "What the hell are you doing?" Maxwell stammered, the bravado faltering as he recognized the storm brewing in my expression. "I'm here to reveal the truth," I declared, my heart racing. "The truth about who you really are." I reached for my laptop, positioned strategically on a nearby table, connecting the USB drive with a swift, deliberate motion. Panic flickered in Maxwell's eyes as he turned to Sarah, who stood frozen, her face draining of color. The room was thick with tension, the weight of my words hanging heavy in the air. As the video flickered to life, murmurs rippled through the audience. My heart pounded in my chest as the screen illuminated their laughter, their stolen moments, their betrayal laid bare for all to see. Gasps echoed through the room, a collective intake of breath that signaled the storm had broken. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, and I could see the realization crash over her like a wave. "Mark!" she exclaimed, but my attention was fixed on Maxwell, whose facade began to crumble under the weight of exposure. "This is what you've built, Sarah?" I said, my voice trembling with a mix of grief and anger. "A world built on lies, a love tainted by infidelity. Your betrayal has been laid bare for all to witness." The video played on, revealing their intimate moments, the private conversations that had once felt sacred now mocking me, echoing the depth of their deceit. I felt a surge of triumph, a vindication of my pain, but it was quickly overshadowed by the tears pooling in Sarah's eyes. "I'm sorry," she cried, her voice breaking. "How could you do this? I thought you trusted me." Trust. The word lingered in the air like a bitter reminder of everything we had built together. "You lost that trust the moment you chose him over our family." I shot back, the finality of my words hanging in the air like a sudden chill. Maxwell, desperate now, attempted to salvage his reputation. "This isn't what it looks like," he shouted. But the crowd was no longer swayed by his charm. The whispers grew louder, churning the atmosphere into a tempest of disbelief and shock. As the video looped back to the beginning, Sarah's facade shattered completely. The laughter that had once brightened her eyes was replaced by anguish and regret, and I felt a pang of empathy amidst the turmoil. But my heart remained resolute. The truth had to be revealed. With the audience wrapped in attention, I took a step back, allowing the reality of the situation to sink in. I could see the shame washing over Sarah, the weight of her choices pressing upon her shoulders. And as the truth settled, I felt a profound sense of closure, one that had been a long time coming. The gala erupted into chaos, voices rising in a cacophony of accusations and disbelief. I stepped away from the stage, feeling the weight of my victory, tempered by the sorrow that lingered in the pit of my stomach. As I made my way through the crowd, I caught a glimpse of Sarah, tears streaming down her face as she was confronted by friends and colleagues. It felt surreal, watching the life we had built unravel before my eyes. And though vengeance coursed through my veins, a part of me mourned the life we had lost, the connection that had slipped through our fingers. Outside the venue, the night air felt cool against my skin, a balm to my tumultuous emotions. I stood alone for a moment, absorbing the reality of what I had done. I had unleashed the truth, exposed the darkness that had been festering in my life, and though the path ahead remained uncertain, I knew one thing for certain. I was no longer a victim. I was free. However bittersweet the victory felt, I had taken back control. My narrative, my dignity, and ultimately my life. The storm may have raged on, but I stood resolute, ready to face whatever came next. The world outside the gala felt surreal, a stark contrast to the chaos that had unfolded within those walls. I stepped into the cool night air, a bitter chill wrapping around me like a shroud. The echoes of my confrontation with Sarah and Maxwell reverberated in my mind, each moment replaying like a haunting melody. I was free, yet the weight of what I had done settled heavily on my shoulders. I took a moment to lean against the cold marble of the building, allowing the adrenaline to ebb from my system. The cacophony of voices inside, the gasps, the accusations, the disbelief, still lingered in my ears. I had laid bare their betrayal, but there was a hollowness inside me, an emptiness that echoed the void left by my shattered marriage. As I observed the bustling city around me, distant laughter and the sound of clinking glasses echoed from nearby bars and restaurants. It all felt so empty, so far removed from the warmth of the life I once knew. I had fought valiantly to reclaim my dignity, yet I was now left standing amidst the ruins, a lone figure in a world that continued to spin recklessly forward. With each breath, the rush of bittersweet triumph slowly gave way to waves of sorrow. I could still picture Sarah's face as the truth unraveled, a mixture of shock, despair, and deep regret. There had been a time when her laughter lit up my world, a time when we shared whispered dreams and painted plans for a future that now felt like a joke. And now, standing in the aftermath of our failed marriage, I felt a burning emptiness where those dreams had once flourished. I pulled my phone from my pocket, scrolling through messages that felt like relics of a happier time. Friends reaching out in support, colleagues offering congratulations for my bravery. Yet, with each notification, a wave of grief washed over me. Their words were hollow echoes, a reminder of a love that had slipped from my grasp. I had exposed the truth, but at what cost? In the stillness of the night, my thoughts became a restless tide, ebbing and flowing between anger and sorrow. I thought of our children, innocent and unaware of the storm that had erupted in their lives. They were the collateral damage of Sarah's betrayal, caught in the crossfire of a collapsing marriage. The thought twisted my heart, sending pangs of guilt coursing through me. Had I truly acted in their best interest? With a heavy sigh, I turned away from the venue, the whispers of the city fading into the background. I needed to regain control, to reclaim my identity from the ashes of our marriage. I had plotted my revenge meticulously, but now I stood stripped of the man I had once been. What remained was a shell, a figure forged from anguish and betrayal. As I walked, my feet seemed to guide me toward the park where Sarah and I had shared countless moments. Carefree laughter, warm embraces, and the simple pleasure of each other's company. The memories flooded back like a tidal wave, each one crashing over me, pulling me under. I could almost see her, illuminated by the soft glow of streetlights, her laughter echoing in the still night air. Felt like a lifetime ago. Sitting on a weathered bench, I reflected on the depths of love and trust that had once bound us. It was painful to confront the reality of what had been lost. I had trusted Sarah implicitly, yet she had betrayed that trust in the most profound way. The realization hung over me like a dark cloud, enveloping me in an icy grip. It felt as if I were mourning a death, the death of a love that had once felt invincible. In that moment of solitude, I understood that I could no longer allow their betrayal to define me. I had to forge a new path forward, a path that would lead to healing and rebirth. Revenge had brought me temporary satisfaction, but the true fight lay ahead. I would have to navigate the complexities of co-parenting, to ensure our children felt secure amidst the turmoil that had engulfed our family. With a newfound sense of determination, I pulled myself up from the bench, realizing that the darkness I had embraced wouldn't be my only companion. I had the power to rewrite my narrative, to reforge my identity as a man resilient in the face of adversity. I would become the father my children needed, a pillar of strength they could rely on as we weathered the storm together. As I strolled through the park, memories of our children's laughter filled my heart, reminding me of the love that still bound us, even amidst the chaos. I envisioned the ways I would support them, the ways I would protect their innocence. I would create a space where they could thrive, unburdened by the weight of our fractured marriage. With each step, the weight of vengeance began to lift, replaced by a flicker of hope. The future remained uncertain, shrouded in the pain of betrayal and loss, but I felt a quiet resolve settling within me. I would embrace the journey ahead, one that would demand resilience, strength, and vulnerability. The night deepened around me, but I no longer felt lost in the shadows. As the stars twinkled above, a sense of clarity washed over me, the realization that, despite the darkness of betrayal, life would continue. I would not succumb to despair. Rather, I would rise, building a new life for myself and our children, forging a path illuminated by hope and resilience. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but I was ready. I would walk toward the light, leaving behind the remnants of vengeance, embracing the journey of healing that lay ahead. I would reclaim my life, my identity, and ensure that the echoes of our past shaped a brighter future for us all.